Hello and welcome to Alex and Me. I'm Brendan or Shoddy, but that's not what's important here. What's important here is my guest. Hello, Alex.
Hi, how's it going?
And so you have brought a topic for us to discuss. What is that?
Yeah, I have brought D&D to talk about something that I've done for 6 years now.
Okay. Yeah, so before we get into that, um, just to contextualize how we know each other, we have known each other since we were nine-ish, 8 or 9. I
Like
moved into the school district
fourth
you
grade.
went to, yeah, in fourth grade. So yeah, about 8 or 9. So we've known each other a long time. And, I mean, you are not unfamiliar to me doing this kind of thing because you have come on stream with me, and we play games on Tuesdays a lot of the time. So this is that unusual to you, probably. This is a bit more formalized, probably, but not that strange.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, and just to address it, Alex does not have a camera, so that is not an error. He just doesn't have a camera. So that is just his profile picture. Um, yeah, I don't care if people just do audio, and I always tell people that in case they're not comfortable with doing camera. You were actually the first person to not do audio, so I had to like sort of think about how I wanted to do this. And since I'm not going to edit this, I just decided to turn on my camera anyway. I will maybe do different things in the future, but that is a future. But yeah, so we can get into the D&D stuff. So you said you've been doing it for 6 years, which actually I did want to ask that because I was like, I don't think he did it when I was in Ohio. Um,
uh, yeah, I think it was like shortly after you left.
Yeah, which makes sense. Because I've been here. I will have been here 60 years in a month, so that lines up pretty well. What got you into doing it?
So I'm gonna be honest. I feel like the first really like big exposure I had to it was that like animated series that you introduced me to back in like middle school or high school, one of the two. What was it called? You know the one.
Unforgotten Realms.
Yeah, that's it. Unforgotten Realms.
Yes,
'Cause I remember I actually printed out like character sheets that
yes,
were
you did.
related to that. Yeah.
I remember. Uh,
And funnily enough, that's where my username comes from, Tordaladar. I had made that name for a fantasy character, and I just use it for like everything now.
yeah, so I wondered if your exposure was the same as mine because my first exposure was, I guess it would have been that series, but my first hands-on exposure would have been DDO, which we did together, and you used the Tordala name for.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, that would have been sixth grade, probably fifth or sixth grade, that we watched that show and played uh, Dungeons and Dragons online together. Um, for anyone that's not aware, I mean, I just explained Dungeons and Dragons online. I originally said the acronym. I should have explained it before, but Unforgotten Realms was a YouTube series done by Rob. His last name is escaping me. Um,
You
his
can
name's
look it up.
Rob. Um, yeah, you can look it up. I can't type on my keyboard; it would be very loud in the mic. Um, he went on to do YouTube stuff under a name like Old Man Willikers or something like that. But it was a series spoofing D&D and Forgotten Realms and stuff like that, where main character, uh, the main characters, Mike and Rob, Mike was way into these tabletop role playing games and he wanted someone to play with, so he invited over his friend Rob, who is an idiot and didn't really care about it. And they just sort of spoofed on that. It was very funny, and then it just sort of ended in the middle. I think he got frustrated with doing it, or maybe just got tired of doing it and just sort of stopped. It was like 50 something episodes, I think like
See, there were
51.
quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it was like 51. Um, yeah, we used to watch that and reference it, and still do sometimes when we play games together. I think usually nowadays probably the main reference would be like dual wield shields or something like that. It doesn't come up as much, but yeah,
You
we.
used to say, what was it? The bear, Archduke, the bear. You know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yeah. God, I don't remember. It was like the Latin name or something, right? It was Archduke
Yeah, it
of the
was not
High
like a like
Bears, but I
Archduke
forget his name.
Arcadian or something.
Yeah, Ursa Arcadius, Archduke of the High Bears. Yeah, Uh,
There it is. It came back.
yeah, and I had a League of Legends account named similarly where I only played Volibear. Yeah,
Yeah, good time.
so yeah, I guess that was both of our introductions into um, I shouldn't say traditional tabletop RPG, but like genuine tabletop RPG stuff. Because obviously we had introductions to stuff that was auxiliary. Like I played RuneScape before that, which is a video game comprised of dice rolls and stuff like that, as many video games are, but
Yeah.
is not really in the true tabletop RPG format. But yeah,
Yeah, I did play a little bit of RuneScape too.
yeah. So you've been doing it for a while. I know you DM a lot. Uh, I assume
Pretty much full time.
you didn't initially DM, did you?
No, I did actually. Eventually, like after I finally decided I wanted to play, it was right after I was just starting to date Taylor,
Hmm.
and I talked to her about it, and she was willing to give it a shot. I just had to get some people together, and so originally our group consisted of me, Taylor, Taylor's sister's husband or boyfriend, I guess at the time, and Cody, right? And so we played like one time, and I knew I would have to be the DM since I was getting the group together. I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll try it, even though I wanted to be a player. We started off with this like the starter thing that they have. It's like Lost Mines of Phandelver is what it's called, and ended up losing Cody after the first session because he went to college, went to Tiffin after that. But we ended up getting Jake and Taylor's brother Reese into it. And yeah, I don't know. After the starter campaign, they were all loved it. I was enjoying DMing, and we were like, okay, so what do we do next? And we picked out Out of the Abyss actually as a module about demons from the abyss.
Um,
But
yeah. So you've played like almost every Saturday since you started, right?
we've had breaks here and there. I mean, obviously with COVID, we had to step back for a little bit. We tried doing digital, like virtual
Mhm.
stuff, and that worked for a time. But it's not the same as like the whole in person vibe of like rolling dice and like seeing each other when you do like the role playing and stuff.
Mhm. You used to also play Sundays sometimes, right? Like you do D&D Saturdays and
Oh my
Pathfinder Sundays,
goodness.
right?
Yeah. So there was a little bit there where we were like just so into playing that we basically took all of our weekend free time and threw it at more D&D stuff.
Yeah.
Like there was a little while there where Jake was running Curse of Strahd for Taylor and I. There was a little bit where Taylor was running stuff. She ran like two different modules, but we never finished like any of them. And then we went to Pathfinder and sort of finished Pathfinder. Pathfinder's a way different beast. But yeah, we had a lot of Sunday time spent on that. There's
Uh,
some point where I was actually DMing Saturdays too, where I did a module at the same time as the normal stuff.
oh boy.
Yeah.
Also, you should move your mic a little bit closer. You're still cutting out sometimes.
Oh, is that better?
Yeah. So do you prefer DMing or is it just sort of you just fell into it and you don't really have a preference?
I kind of fell into it, but it kind of grew on me. I It's hard to imagine not being a DM. There have been like short little spurts where I wasn't DMing, and I do enjoy being a player, but there's always like this sort of like nagging feeling like, man, I wish I could DM right now.
Hmm. Okay, so uh, you mentioned the first module, the starter module you did. You mentioned Abyss, you mentioned Shroud. What are the other campaigns you've done?
So the biggest campaigns that we've done, aside from like I would say Out of the Abyss was the bigger one that we did, but after the module, I decided I wanted to do something like homebrew, which that's just making your own stuff like from scratch.
Yeah.
So I took a hand at that and made a whole world. Well, I should say mostly continents. I didn't really like do the whole planet at the time, but basically made the whole like continent area, the cities, NPCs, all that kind of stuff, and just made my own story for them to sort of like play around in. And that ended up being, I want to say, probably 2.5 years, just because like we had that short little break where we needed to step back for a little bit. But yeah, it was about a 2-year campaign, and it was. A lot of fun. And after we did that homebrew one, Jake was saying that he wanted to do his stuff. So he had a book called Dark Matter, which is made by Mage Hand Press. It's basically it uses takes the 5e rules, but sort of like converts them so you can use them in space, and gives like a lot of like space, like like Star Trek, Star Wars style sort of technology and that sort of thing. And we started doing that for a little bit, but Jake was like in school, he had a bunch of stuff going on, and couldn't really like uh, handle the pressure and commitment, I guess, that it is to do prep work
Yeah.
all week before a session. Um, which is completely understandable. But so while he was doing that, I ran a module called Descent into Avernus. Um, it's basically just this campaign going into the like first layer of the Nine Hells. We didn't make it super far in that one because I ended up having to take over for the like main homebrew campaign thing.
Mhm.
That like basically the Saturday, right? And so we ended up sort of stopping that since I was had to basically just make a bunch of stuff from scratch for the next campaign since Jake wasn't able to run his anymore. And that's kind of where we're at now. Is the I call it campaign 2 because it's like the second campaign homebrew campaign.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's like the main stuff that we've done. Like there's a little bit here and there. We did a one shot once after Out of the Abyss, but trying to think. I think that's pretty much all the modules we've done and all the campaigns. Somehow that added out to 6 years.
Do you have a favorite of all of those?
So far, yeah, I would say the first homebrew campaign is my favorite. There's really not a feeling that you get from modules that you can with like a homebrew, where it's a lot easier for me to tailor the plot and the story around the players
Yeah.
and their characters. So it's a lot easier to get sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Immersed into it, right? And basically just really relate to everything that's going on. And by the end of it, like, people would get really sad if a character was about to die, or, get really invested into everything to the point where, they were getting mad at some of the villains when they would show up like they're real people. It was great. By the end of the campaign, when we finished, everyone was just so empty inside. Like a piece of them was just like gone. Like, what do we do now?
Yeah. Yeah, so my only practical experience with stuff like this, because I've never been in or run a campaign, is when you sort of come to me and you're like, I'm trying to do this thing. How do I do this thing?
Yeah.
Which is the thing we've discussed. I assume that that point has passed now, and you can talk about the last thing we talked about, like,
Yeah, yeah, we can talk about that. It actually went pretty well. It was funny though because I remember one of the things we discussed. So I guess just to give some context, it was basically like town of Salem, right?
it was a
And
temple, right?
everyone, yeah, yeah, it was this temple that one of the players was going to, and each temple they go to has these trials, and each trial has like supernatural magic stuff that happens to sort of illustrate the trial and what it's supposed to represent. And in the case that they were doing, it was what was it exactly? I can't remember the names, but it was basically theme was you know uh, sort of figuring each other out, discovering what their like secrets were, and taking appropriate action, like punishment, sort of thing. And so it was like a town of Salem where someone was a traitor, and it was really funny because the role that we had discussed, where one of the players, like the role where you won if you and one other person made it to the end. Uh, we did it completely randomly, and the person that he had to get to the end with was the traitor. so, so the traitor, I didn't even think about this before, but the traitor had no chance of winning, basically. at
Yeah,
that
you
point.
maybe should have made it so the traitor couldn't be the person.
Yeah, I didn't think about it until afterwards, but honestly, it made it really funny. So I I have no regrets about it. But yeah, the whole thing worked pretty well. Someone stepped through a trap and they immediately got, the they I what I did was I had them like turn to ash essentially, and nobody was actually dead. It was just sort of a ruse. But uh, yeah, but after the first person disintegrated, they were all like, "Shit, what the hell? What's going on here?" And only the traitor knew, what was going on, and it was actually Jake, and he was playing it off pretty well, I think. Uh, they didn't vote him out or anything, but it did put a strain on the character relationships to some extent because I remember one of the players was like, "Yeah, let's just vote her out because like she's not like fully my friend, and the other people I've known longer." So it was like, damn, really setting the tone.
Yeah, that'll affect things.
Yeah, and it did up until her character actually died last session.
Oh boy.
Yeah, good times. Just character deaths, pretty great.
But yeah, so that's my only practical experience is basically like helping you plan um, stuff like that. Uh, if I ever did do it and I DM'd, I know I would want to homebrew not only a setting but a system, which is a huge amount of work, and I will probably never actually do it. Um,
Yeah, you've talked to me a little bit about some of the stuff you've come up with.
yeah, I have some stuff like noted down on the system, but it's not a comprehensive system by any means.
Yeah.
It would have to be run online with the amount of things I wanted to do. I would have to basically write a program that is tailored to my system for inputting stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is probably not a thing I will ever do because even if I finish the system, the chances of the system running well and being fun to play is like astronomically low. Like you can't just invent a system for a tabletop RPG game and have it be functional and fun.
I mean, you
Because
can take elements from other stuff too, but
yeah,
yeah, I it's definitely a lot more work than just making a world. And so like making your own mechanics is definitely harder.
yeah. But on that note, if you had full control, like you had the ability to do all that stuff, do you have an ideal sort of system or campaign you would run? Like things you wish you were able to do, but can't really with the existing systems?
Nothing off the top of my head. To be honest, they give a lot of freedom in the fifth edition D&D. It's very much so geared towards DM fiat, which it's just literally the DM makes the rules as they go if they have to, kind of thing. They can change things, they can do whatever they want, as long as the players are having fun. It really doesn't matter what they do. So, I mean, there are some mechanics that maybe could be changed a little bit. Like I know the bonus action could maybe be modified a little bit, um, but yeah, I don't know. It's pretty easy as far as like the system goes for just making whatever I want. Like if I find a monster that I like, but I don't like exactly how it works, I can just do it because it's my world. I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing I want to do that was difficult was like I wanted to do like custom class modifications on the fly um in the homebrew campaign I was planning. So if you did something unique or um, did something like a sufficient amount of times or something in that regard, I could ask you if you want to modify your class. And in some cases this would be like a full change, in some cases it would be a specialization. So like say somebody was a mage and
Hmm.
they only picked fire spells for whatever reason. I'd be like, okay, well, do you want to just spec into like a fire mage and I'll give you a fire bonus, but I'll give you a like a negative augment against other stuff, like just tailoring stuff to their class. But as a result, the math gets kind of wonky, right? Like if they pick fire mage, I'm like, okay, I'll give you a 20% bonus. That's fairly simple. They could just edit their spells to have the 20% bonus. But if they later get another thing that's like, oh, you've cast this spell 100 times, I'm going to give you mastery on this spell and give you like 50% bonus. And like you're either augmenting their spells every time and they're editing their spell cards or whatever they're using to track their spells, or they have it as listed like accolades or achievements or whatever on their class. You have to
Yeah.
remember to do that math when they do anything. And so the idea of the system was going to be that was going to be tailored to like a lot of things, charm percentage and stuff like that. It's like it's way easier to just do it as a program, which means I would have to write a program to do it. And I was like, I quickly realized I was like, this is becoming complex and a mess, and like I don't know if the complexity is adding anything to it or if it would be taking away. So my plan was if I ever actually finished it, was like seeing about running it with like you and Taylor and my fiance and maybe like one or two other people, and then before that I would have people run test like solo arcs, like just like get on a call with them for a couple
Yeah.
hours and run like a dungeon or something, and then add them into the history of the world as characters. Um, but I was like, it's gonna be a fucking mess, and I have not made any progress on actually finishing it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I like the openness of D and D because I've watched a lot of D&D content, like actual play stuff, and like I get the appeal even if I've never run it. But yeah, the urge to homebrew something I think exists in a lot of people, and I think it doesn't always work well from what I've heard from people that play campaigns. They fizzle a lot, I think.
Yeah, I've been pretty lucky having like the core group of players that I have with three and a half of us, I'd say, that are constantly around. It's been a little bit of a revolving door for some of them, but the core group has been there, and I think that makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a thing. Yeah, scheduling is definitely hard with stuff. I mean, we've run into this just like you and me trying to play the Tuesday games we play with other people, and it's just like, yeah, this doesn't
Yeah.
work. No matter what set day you have, somebody's schedule will change eventually, and it'll literally fuck everything up.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky in the 6 years. We've had people miss sessions, obviously. I mean, that's going to happen. Life
Yeah.
happens. People have weddings, funerals, whatever. Uh, you all accept it and just play what you can.
Yeah. Um, who are the core people that haven't? I mean, Taylor is one of them, I assume, that hasn't rotated
Yeah.
out. Who was the other one or two?
So Cody came back. So he's actually one of them, and he has been playing. He joined again during the homebrew campaign. So like he missed
The first homebrew
the
campaign?
yes, yeah, the first homebrew campaign. He missed the rest of the starter module. He missed Out of the Abyss, the first module that we did after the starter, and then joined fairly close to the beginning of the first homebrew. Is like he only missed a couple of sessions before he was like, "Hey, do you mind if I come back?" And I was like, "Yeah, we can definitely fit you in." Um, and we have Jake who's been there as well. He joined partway through the starter, like after we lost Cody. We brought him and Reese in, actually Taylor's brother, and uh, Reese has been kind of like in and out. That's why he's the three and a half. He's the half one. Uh, he like recently left and then came back 2 sessions ago, I think actually. But yeah, Jake's been there since the starter campaign. So yeah, between Jake, Cody, and Taylor, that's pretty much the main group. With Reese sort of having his strange uh, in and out.
Okay. So does having the same core people affect things in a negative way? Like obviously it lends itself to reliability, which is nice. But like does it feel samey in some campaigns? Like is someone like consistently playing the same character or the same archetype of character, and like does it feel samey in that regard, or is everyone switching it up or
For the most part, it's been actually nicer. There have been some characters that are kind of samey. I know Taylor kind of had a few issues in the beginning where she was playing the same like hot-headed, kind of confrontational character, right? And like even if her character wasn't starting out that way, it kind of turned it into that. But she has been able to play different characters in like the full campaigns. So like this campaign, um, completely stepped away from that, which it's good, obviously. And then Jake, Jake's actually like exceptional at role playing out characters, so he's never really had um, the sort of stuck archetype. Although he has always ended up as sort of the unsaid or unspoken leader of the group. Like people tend to turn to him when they don't know what to do. So, but I think that's less of him role playing it and like making that character than it is everybody else just sort of like turning and looking to him for guidance, kind of thing.
Mhm.
He specifically said during this last campaign that he didn't want to be that same like leader decision maker, and it hasn't been as much for sure, but there are definitely times where it is like things don't necessarily move along as smoothly or as quickly without him sort of pushing people.
Yeah. Has it ever been like
uh,
character inappropriate for him to be the leader?
um, this one I think kind of is. He was definitely trying to play a more reserved character. He's actually playing a female character as well, but he's trying to play like this reserved, like sort of um a traumatized character. I mean, as most people play, right? They always have like their past trauma,
Yeah.
but he wanted to just sort of sit in the back and role play a character that um I mean would still interact with people but not push the party or the group in whatever direction, right? Uh and it has been better, but like I said, there's still some of those moments where it seems like he does have to like step up to the plate still because people just look towards him. I think it's just because he's so comfortable in the setting and role playing that people just sort of look at him as like an example.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of where that comes from. But um, like I said, it's a lot better this campaign for in terms of being not being the leader. So it's not too bad. It's not super out of character, but it is occasionally.
Do you guys do the voices when you play? Like, do you voice like change your voice?
Oh man, I do for sure. um, I try to change up like my accent or pitch or whatever I can for each NPC that I play. Uh, it becomes very difficult sometimes to remember what a character sounds like because of how many different ones I try to do. I've actually tried learning new accents too,
Hmm.
just for the fun of it. Like there's some accents are extremely hard. I remember I had to learn how to do an Irish accent because I would always just go to Scottish because you hear all the dwarves in Lord of the Rings and you're like, yeah, that's right. But then when you actually go to do Irish, it's impossible.
Those dwarves
Go
aren't Irish;
straight.
they're Scottish.
Exactly. That's what I
Oh,
mean.
okay, I thought you
Yeah,
were
yeah.
saying I'm trying to mimic the dwarves and do an Irish accent. It's like, no, those are
No, I I was trying to do the Irish accent and I accidentally ended up mimicking the dwarves. Yeah, so I had to practice that for a while, and I don't even know if I can do Scottish anymore, like better than I can do Irish because I practiced the Irish for so long. But Jake does accents usually. Taylor tries to as well, but some of the other people either aren't comfortable enough with it, or they just don't think that they're good at doing that sort of thing, so they kind of they don't really go for it too much. Like Reese tries to sometimes.
I feel like I could see myself doing an affectation, but I don't think I do an accent.
I feel like accents are so much easier than doing like other subtle changes.
I disagree. I feel like if your character is like, you know, a big personality, charismatic, it's way easier to be sort of bolsterous in your normal voice than it is to put on an accent. For
Yeah, I
me,
guess that's true. Tone can be a lot harder when you're trying to do an accent and like fit making the right tone. But I don't know. Personally, from just like playing a bunch of NPCs, I think that obviously personality, but I think that a lot of the times the accent is sort of like a distinguishing feature.
okay, yeah, I don't know. Again, it's not something I've actually done, so I don't have like an actual personal account of what I would do. Um, I don't know. Maybe someday I'll do it, and then I'll know what I actually feel in my heart. If I do, maybe I will think accent is easier when I actually have to do it.
Maybe,
Um,
maybe. I
Mm.
try to encourage people to do some sort of voice at the very least, like whether it's an accent or just like a change in pitch or like more gruff or something. It just kind of I feel like it'll let you step out of yourself and into a character a little bit easier than just talking as yourself.
Yeah. You know, I agree. I think you need some sort of delineation to be able to like, yeah, to because otherwise you are going to invariably. This is a problem in like RPG video games too. Is like invariably you will fall into whatever you're comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
Um, and having that delineation helps, I think, a little bit with like, I am not me, I am this person. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe sometime if I'm in Ohio long enough, I'll try to be a hanger-on character in one of your campaigns for like, well, I guess it would depend how long I'm in Ohio. For an
I
indeterminate
mean,
amount of time.
yeah, yeah. You tend to be like in and out. Like sometimes
Oh
you're
yeah,
here for a
I
lot
would have to
longer.
be
It's
like a
crazy.
mercenary character hired for one sub quest and then killed off or left the party.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
I mean, I'm definitely cool with doing that sometime. Having guest characters and guest players and stuff is pretty fun usually, and like it's more fun because you can make them into like villains. You can't make players into villains really. Like you
that's
could,
true.
but then they can't play them anymore. And a lot of people aren't okay with that. So bringing in another person is pretty interesting because you can run some ideas by them and like
Would you do it
we
betrayal
actually
style? Like, if I was the villain, you and I go out into the living room to talk, and then we come back and I monologue to the players.
Good luck monologuing. Monologuing doesn't work in tabletop settings.
No,
Normally, what ends up
I
happening,
mean, technically, if
I
it's my
remember.
turn, I can hold them hostage in monologue, unless you
True,
have
if
a
it's in
timer rule.
combat,
Yeah.
I try to say they can't say too much in combat, so I try to like adhere to those rules as well. But I remember back when we did Curse of Strahd, Jake was playing, Strahd von Zarovich, the main antagonist, and he shows up in the city and is like trying to give this speech, and my character was like, "Dude, I don't care what you have to say," and I'm just shooting arrows
You
at him while
attacked
he's
him,
on the
yeah.
stage. Yeah, I missed a couple of times, and like one went into him, he just pulled it out and kept talking. I'm like, I mean, I'm not gonna stop. So he only got like a few sentences in. I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you, Jake. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. That could be fun. It also like I guess it my travel's chaotic, so it would matter where you are in your campaign if you because like sometimes you just can't shoehorn something like that in.
Yeah, if they're in like a dungeon sort of setting or like a temple or something, it's a lot harder.
Yeah,
I mean, there's always ways to do it. It's just sometimes, obviously other situations are better than
yeah.
others.
In that sort of vein, do you have a favorite like type of character or character archetype or anything in that regard?
As like players or for the NPCs that I make or either.
I guess either or both, you know.
Um, I don't know. I don't really have a favorite archetype that I know of. I do have like personal like favorite NPCs that I've done. Um, and I generally tend to enjoy the characters that everybody makes for the most
Mhm.
part. So I don't know. One of my favorite NPCs is this Fire Ganassi or Janasi. I don't know how people are gonna. If anyone listens to this and they try to correct my pronunciation, I'll put both in there. Um, but she was a in the first campaign. Um, she lived in a city that was known for its magic school, and she was just a student there. And the group came along, and I forget specifically how they met her, but they ended up meeting her, and she has this very, um, we'll say, strong, bullheaded personality for learning. Like that's her main goal is just to learn new things, new spells, like that kind of thing. And she helped them with this sort of like I don't want to call it a side quest, but it basically was a side quest, right? Like you have like the main plot, like overarching plot, but this was just sort of something that was on the side there that they could pick up if they wanted to, and it was like basically this whole murder case. Um, So they traveled around with her. She helped them with the case and getting into the school so they could like investigate and stuff. And afterwards, I was like, okay, I played her. She's done. They, probably won't go back to the city or anything like that. And then towards the middle end of the campaign, things were like going to shit. Like, everything's getting destroyed, monsters are roaming around, and the party's like, you know what? Let's go back and warn her. Let's go warn that city. We're gonna warn her specifically and like talk to her. And they were like, "Why don't you come with us?" After they get there, and she's like, "I mean, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to stay here and get trampled. Yeah, let's go." So she ends up traveling with them and becoming a much more important character than I had expected. To the point where she actually um, was studying magic from the big bad, right? Like the main antagonist of that campaign,
Mhm.
and he could do like time manipulation stuff. She studied to the point where at the very, very end of the campaign, they brought her along for the last fight, and she was able to be the first person in like, well, nobody knows how long, if ever, to cast a 10th level spell because it only goes up to like ninth level spells normally. And so she cast like mass time stop, which is, it just stops time for a moment. So the party had a chance to collect themselves, and it was like a really huge moment for the whole campaign. And she ended up being basically probably one of, if not my favorite NPCs for that whole campaign.
In a similar vein to that, but I guess more severe, were there any instances where the party went off rails and did something you didn't expect that like fucked your planning? Because like that presumably made the final fight a little bit easier. But was there a more immediate consequence instance where like they just like did something unexpected and fucked you royally?
Um, there have been a couple times where they've basically made me throw out entire notes.
Hmm.
I can't remember the specifics because I usually don't. I don't usually get hung up on that kind of thing because I find it hilarious when they either circumvent or just completely avoid something. Um, but there was one moment where I had them fighting. It was a Tarask, right? And you know what a Tarask is, yeah.
I don't think so.
It's like it basically is like the supposed to be like the end game like monster like challenge rating 30 in the fifth edition, which is like the highest thing. Um, it's this big dinosaur looking thing. It has like magic resistance. People like shoot magic at it, and it can like bounce off, I believe, and like hit them with it and stuff. And I souped it up too, and I gave it a ranged attack because I'm an asshole. Um, and it was being controlled by this other creature called a Morkoth, which is like this like basically think like a dragon that likes to hoard things, but it's actually just like a squid. Not quite a kraken, but close enough.
Okay.
Um, but it basically one of the main things about it is that it has like an island that travels through the different planes, floats around and stuff, and it basically learned how to control the island so that it could like fly around at will and move through the planes and stuff. And the group went up to the island to fight the Morkoth that was controlling the Trask. They beat the Morkoth, learned how to control the island, and then took the island and smashed it onto the Trask so they didn't have to actually fight it. And I did not expect that. I was like, "Dang, you know what? Yeah, yeah, that definitely works. Go for it." And it was a really cool moment. I didn't know how they. I thought they were gonna fight the Tarrasque. I was like, "Yeah, you guys are gonna have to fight this thing." Nope, they just smashed an island on it.
I mean, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll kill something. Um, yeah, I'd wondered because one of the actual play podcasts I've listened to, there was a whole arc the TM had planned, and the players just kind of fucked it uh, by doing something and rolling well and circumventing it. I don't want to spoil it because I still want you to listen to that, but it's called Arms Outstretched. It's quite notable in the adventures out.
Yeah, sure. I'll like take a note of that.
Um, oh, so actually, on the note of actual play, um, I know you watch slash listen to Critical Role.
hmm
Are there any others that you engage with?
I've watched a little bit of. Dice Camera Action when that was still around. Jake was really into that one, and I watched a small amount of that. And then there was wow, I'm trying to remember what it's Dimension 20.
Okay, I've watched a lot of Dimension 20 as well.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of Dimension 20. Critical Role is the main one that I've watched. But yeah, Dimension 20 um was another one, and it's like a very different style, like DM
Hmm.
to an extent. So it's an interesting watch.
Well, that DM also has been on Critical Role now as well, for
Yeah, I
what
saw
just
that.
happened, the like a prehistory thing of the original
Yeah,
campaign.
he did the what they call the calamity, which is
Yeah.
like the basically he DM'd the moment just before the world-ending event, and I have not watched it. I've seen bits and pieces here and there, and I watched like an hour-long video of all three of the like DMs that they've had on Critical Role now, like just talking. And yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah. The DM for Dimension 20, Brendan Lee Mulligan, is great. I love the campaigns he runs for Dimension 20. They're very fun and engaging to watch in a way that um, Critical Role didn't really do it for me. Like I've tried to watch what the original one's called, Mighty Nine.
Um, no, Mighty Nine's the second one. Vox Machina is the first.
Okay, that one. Didn't do it for me really. I watched like a couple episodes, so I put in a decent amount of time into trying it. But I've also heard the second campaign is just better. But in that regard, actually,
Yeah, it was. I tried watching the first one for a bit.
we you sounded like we were maybe having connection issues for a second.
Yeah, I think it was cutting out a bit there. I could make out most of what you were saying.
Okay, I think we're good now.
Yeah, I think it's good now.
Okay. Um, yeah, I don't know how you'll feel about this, but I know it's a thing my fiance has noted, and other people in the D&D space have heard echoing. Um, there's this sort of D&D bubble, largely Critical Role centric bubble. And as a result, there's a sort of Matt Mercer effect of like people wanting to run campaigns and be Matt Mercer. And my fiance and other people believe that it is worse for it because like people are just emulating his style. Uh, and these people feel that it makes it kind of lame. I don't know how you feel about that.
I've seen it. I've read it. Um, I think that there are people that definitely take it too far and run it into the ground. Um, I do think that Matt Mercer is a phenomenal DM. Like, there's obviously some inspiration there, but I just run best I can. I personally haven't really had any like experience with the Matt Mercer effect outside of reading it on like forums, Reddit, whatever. And I've actually had one player who talked to me, and he had mentioned like somehow we started talking about the Matt Mercer effect, and he actually said that he just prefers, not that he's had Matt Mercer, but he likes my DM style enough that he doesn't think that he would even want to switch over to like someone like that kind of thing. So yeah, it's cool. I'm glad to hear that.
I mean, funnily enough, I brought it up. I don't actually know what that specifically refers to because, again, I didn't make it into anywhere into Critical Role. So I don't know what specifically they're referring to that he does that people are emulating.
So it's basically just like I don't I think it's like less of the emulation than it is the players sitting down and being like, this guy's not as good as Matt Mercer. And like they'll be like, well, on Critical Role they do this or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And the DM's like kind of put out because of that. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
like this isn't Critical Role. I'm running my own table. So I think that's kind of what it's more referencing is the expectations that players have.
Mhm. I do know one element of it, which is that people want to record and post their campaigns. Like they want their campaign to be a spectacle rather than just a campaign for the people at the table. I know that is one element that people um,
Yeah.
derives, which is like focus on your players and making an experience for them, not for a wider world. Um, which is fair and also not fair. I think you can record something without making it be for other people. Probably not everyone in this instance does that, but
Yeah.
you could sit down and set up a room mic and a camera, your setup at your apartment, and not change the way you play. And that I wouldn't say that's you emulating Critical Role. Like that is just you recording incidentally what you are already doing. Um, but also you already have a background of doing it without doing that, so maybe that's important. I guess this is more specifically people who like are starting a campaign and then start recording it immediately and are very worried about you know, are people watching our campaign and they get
Yeah.
demotivated to even play anymore if people aren't watching it.
We've like discussed possibly like streaming it or like recording it and then putting it up on like YouTube or something. It does sound kind of fun, but yeah, we are very much so used to not having that environment, and we would have to make quite a few changes if we would. Um, obviously some humor might not be able to be recorded. Um,
You'd also
and
have to make sure people are like not going to start acting up for the purpose of it. Like
yeah,
that's always a thing that I worried about because like back when Friday nights we used to play more games online when I was streaming and like we'd get a bunch of people in. It was always a thing of like, can I stream this night knowing who we're going to be playing with? Like this was a big problem when we played League in particular because it would be a rotating cast of people that we were playing with on any given night, and it's like, is this person gonna be weird or performative or say something that isn't on or like whatever the case may be. Um,
yeah.
which is a struggle. And like saying something that isn't on is more of a like that's a problem in any regard because you don't want the person saying it regardless. Um, but yeah, the performative aspect is definitely, it can be frustrating when like, somebody is clearly acting away because people are watching. And I mean that's also not limited to recording. That happens just when groups merge or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that that's probably a big thing with people in this situation where it's like, I've been playing D&D with these people for years, and now this guy's being weird and trying to like run the table because we're recording it. So it could suck.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely not. We talked about it and it seemed cool, but I think that ultimately, especially for now, we've decided that it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah,
We like the way we play. And if we were to put something up, like we play for 6+ hours,
yeah.
right? Give or take, whatever time we spend goofing around, shooting shit and whatnot. But
Mhm.
yeah, things would have to change, and I don't know if that would make it less enjoyable for people. So for now, we're just keeping it as it is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to name names or anything, but I can say in your shoes with confidence, I would not record with some of the people at your table.
I know exactly who you're referencing.
um, yeah, it's bold of you to have even considered it because I wouldn't have considered it.
Listen, I don't know if that person was a part of it when we were discussing it originally, like at the time. So there's
Well, I will
that.
tell you, there's two people. So
Yeah, well, there's we with some of the new people we have now, definitely would not.
um, yeah, and I think that's just sort of a fact of life. Like, if I was ever gonna do a recorded thing, it would have to be like a very curated thing of like, these are the people that I will do it with, and there will be no exceptions. Um, like I talked about the homebrew thing. If I decided to record that, like you, Taylor, my fiance, like obviously any of those, like I'm not worried about, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's also cases where you just like, I imagine people get into situations where they just don't know that this is going to happen because like they aren't in a setting like this with with the people they normally hang out with. Like, not that I stream with people a lot, but if I did, I would. There are a lot of people that I hang out with that I just wouldn't know if they're going to be sort of weird and performative. Um, ahead of time.
Yeah, that's true. How did you end up just deciding that I was going to be safe enough for that?
I mean, you and I have streamed together plenty of times now.
True. I can't remember what our first stream was though.
It was years ago. It would have been
I
like
know. I'm trying to
Astroneer
remember
or
what it was.
something like,
It probably was Astroneer actually.
or modded Minecraft maybe like the again years ago. It would have been. I was still at Megan and Alaric's house when we started doing theme stream, so that's
Yeah.
that's at least 2.5 years ago now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and probably longer. I mean, I've been in Phoenix now for 6 years, so it could have been anywhere up to like 5 years ago that we started doing it. I really have no idea.
Yeah,
Um,
you should have kept that list that you were making.
well, we started that list way later.
Yeah, it wasn't like that much later, was it?
It was. It was. It
And
was. It was much
apparently
later.
my memory of like time is not great.
We started that list shortly before we stopped doing theme stream, and we were like,
Mm.
we just didn't come up with themes anymore, and we just did Tuesday stream where we just like played a game. That was
Yeah,
it.
that was a lot easier.
Yeah.
We were really notoriously bad at thinking of themes ahead of time.
Um. Yeah. Anyway, we've sort of derailed the D&D talk, but
Yeah.
we talked about consumption of D&D media already. Oh, I guess a particularly relevant thing. As of yesterday, I assume you watched the new D&D trailer, Honor Among
I did.
Thieves.
So I don't use an ad blocker on my desktop anymore. I just like after I got my new desktop, I just never installed it. I was like, whatever. I mean, the only ads I really get are from YouTube for the most part, and like they help pay for channels and whatnot. And targeted ads, man, they got me. I was just sitting here. I forget. We might have been like playing Slay the Spire or something, and I just turn and I see this ad going, and I'm like, is that D&D? They just said something about an owl bear,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty exciting actually. I'm glad to see that it's growing into what it is with media. I mean, you got Baldur's Gate 3 coming out soon.
There was already a D&D movie, all right? Don't pretend like this is the
Okay, we
first
don't
one.
talk about that one. If
Hey, it has
I
Jeremy Irons in it. He's great.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that one
No,
did
yeah,
not
the
have
people think
great
that movie
reception.
sucks. The people are very mad at this movie online already from the trailer. Um, there's a few points of contention in particular. There's some arguments that they ripped off Critical Role, which I think is people just being very stupid. I don't know if you've seen any of this.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there's a character in the trailer that is a druid. The redheaded lady is a druid in the trailer.
Okay.
And people are saying she's a ripoff of some Critical Role character named Keyleth or Kalith, something like this.
Keyleth, yeah,
Keyleth.
it was Matt Mercer's wife who played that character.
Marisha Ray, I believe her name is.
Marisha, yeah,
Something like that.
yeah, it's
Uh,
Marisha.
yeah, so people are arguing that this is a ripoff of her character, and their points are, from what I've seen, the following: is redheaded, is a
Yeah,
druid,
yeah,
wears green,
yeah.
and then this next point is bullshit, but people are making it. They're saying because Marisha's character was, I don't know what she was, but she had antlers.
Yeah. I forget what they called them, but yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, it's like Cenarians or something like that. I've read a story with like antlered people that is something like that. It's not important. But anyway, the character in the trailer is a tiefling, and they have horns. And they're like, this is a ripoff of that character, clearly. They have things sticking out of their head, they're redheaded, they wear green.
Yeah.
Which is sort of ignoring the point that every character ever that has anything to do with controlling plants or nature
Where's
wears
green?
green.
Yeah.
So it's just a red-headed person that is that type of character. Like Poison Ivy is that. The girl from Sky
True.
High is that.
Oh yeah, true. She's redheaded too.
Yeah. Um, I'm sure there are many other examples of it. Like this is just a thing that is known. Like it's like, oh, your wizard's wearing blue. It's like, yes, the wizard's wearing blue. That is a thing that happens. Wizards wear
Blue or
blue.
purple?
Yeah. So yeah, people are very stupidly upset with that. And then there's a lot of argument about the druid turning into an owlbear because owlbears are not beasts, and thus the druid should not be able to turn into it. And to those people, like, shut the fuck up. Who cares?
You're
Like,
right. Like,
I bet there's loads of homebrew campaigns that have let druids turn into non-beasts. Like,
oh man,
probably
we actually
many.
had I had Jake play a villain character because his character betrayed the party for a short while and left.
Mhm.
And so for a very, very short time, I had him make a druid, and we messed around with the idea that he could turn into aberrations instead. So he turned into, like space tentacle creatures, and it's like, it's fun. It's cool. You just do fun stuff.
Yeah, there's so I've seen again. It's not a scene that I'm in, but I've seen online. There's like the rule of cool or whatever. Like the DM allows it if it's cool. It's like I know all
Yeah.
you fucks aren't out there prepping your spell components. Almost no DM I know like I've ever heard of does that. So are you gonna get fucking up in arms about that? Um, the only valid criticism I saw, which I still think is like just shut the fuck up, um, is Chris Pine's character is a bard.
hmm
Or at least seemingly he plays. He's the leading charming man, and he plays a lute. So probably he is a bard as his
If
class.
he's not a bard, then
Yeah.
I feel like it's a
If
mistake.
he,
But
yeah, maybe he's coincidentally someone who just plays the lute, but
yeah,
presumably he's a bard. But we don't see him using any magic, and as the leading man, he may not be the magical character. And people are like, well, bards should really have magic. Bards are a magic class, and it's just like, who fucking cares? Just watch the movie and shut the fuck up. Like, why does everything have to be the same the way it is? It's a homebrew campaign in the movie, and then everything is solved and shut the fuck up. Like, just so it's
no,
just
yeah,
exhausting reading people complain about a thing. And like I know there's an element of like I love this thing and I want it to be right, but when your thing is literally like built to have people change things about it, you can't complain when people change things about it. That's the nature of the thing that you like. That's what you like about the thing.
yeah. Like I would never expect something like a video game to follow one for one like how the tabletop is. It doesn't work in certain ways, and when people adapt it to like even a movie, they're gonna take some creative liberties, which is fine as long as it's still like intact to an extent where it's recognizably D&D.
Yeah. I think the
And it
movie looks fun. I think I'll watch it. I think it looks interesting.
Oh yeah, I actually want to go into theaters and watch that movie just because I love D&D, and as long as it's got some references in there and like all the fun stuff, I'm going for it. I'm definitely excited to see what they do with it.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine my fiance and I will go see it. I mean, she loves D&D, so probably we will go see the movie in theaters if it is acceptable to do so, depending on the state of the world at the time.
True, yeah. It's
um,
been sort of better.
yeah, but then it's getting worse, and fun stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I guess also in the note of adaptations. So I think I mean, again, we've talked about it. The mutual experience of us is DDO, Dungeons and Dragons Online, and
Mhm.
obviously we've played other games that are adaptations of tabletop RPGs. So where do you land on like tabletop RPG adaptations game? Do you like them when they're more authentic, or do you like it when it's kind of fudged and more video gamey? Because like I would say like things like Baldur's Gate and DDO to some extent are like more in line with the actual tabletop RPG, right? Whereas things
Yes, definitely.
like Dark Alliance and stuff like that are more in the realm of like fudging it a bit and just sort of using it as flavor.
Yeah, don't know if I have like a huge preference. But that being said, Baldur's Gate 3 and games like that, like Divinity, made by the same people, Larian. Those I have spent a lot of time in. So I guess if I had to say, I would definitely say I prefer the more tabletop experience, like esque games as opposed to like I played Dark Alliance. It's fun. It's good. It plays a lot like Vermintide, Vermintide 2. And it's a good game, but yeah, I don't know. There's something about the draw of the turn-based combat, the random numbers generators like rolling dice and stuff that's just very down to my roots, I guess.
Yeah, I mean there are elements of it I like the whole slots thing. Like DDO does this more. Actually, in Divinity, this isn't. It's a non-factor. Like you don't really worry about spell slots.
Nah, it's just
Um,
cooldowns. Yeah.
but like we had to worry about spell slots in DDO. That was like a big thing, which is more traditional. I think the biggest problem you run into with video game adaptations of tabletop RPGs is difficulty. So when you can select a difficulty in the game, the way that translates in tabletop RPG mechanics, I think, is kind of bad a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah,
because
I'd
if
agree
they
with that.
just increase your chance of critical failing, that's not great. and like, um, and like, I don't know. Have you played Divinity on like hard or like the hardest difficulty or anything?
I don't think I played on the hardest difficulty. I honestly don't remember. Sad thing is, with as many hours as I have in that game, I've never actually like reached the very, very end of the game.
Hmm.
And I have like 300 plus hours in it.
I haven't
But
for Divinity 2 either, but for Divinity 1, last Trophy League, I put it on my list. And so I had to get the platinum for it to continue progressing. And one of the
was
things is
that
to,
long?
it's quite long.
Yeah.
And one of the things to, uh, one of the trophies is to complete the game on honor mode, which tactician is the highest difficulty. It's the hard difficulty of the game. Honor
Yeah, yeah.
mode is that, but you get one save. Let me tell you,
Wh-
you can die
What?
real fast in that game, and if your party wipes, your save gets deleted. So you have to
Oh
avoid
my
all party
gosh.
wipes, um, which is a fucking nightmare.
I did not even realize that's what they did. That's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, that's honor mode. So I had to do that, and like, yeah, it's not a thing that lends itself exceptionally well to difficulty increases because the game is already set. Like in a campaign, if you want to make things harder, if your boys are steamrolling the last dungeon, the next dungeon you just sub out the monsters for like a higher CR monster, right?
Yeah.
Um, but that I guess I shouldn't say it can't happen. That doesn't happen in a video game, right? Like the encounters are mostly already scripted. You just make them harder in ways that don't feel great to play. And this is true of
Increased
other
health,
video games. Like,
increased damage.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of like bullet sponge stuff that happens in video games in general. So it just becomes rather than and Divinity really has this problem because rather than being about like sort of party cohesion and everybody growing as a character and then working together in like in their individual way, it becomes how do I build my party to effectively cheese every combat I come into, um, which
Yeah.
is sort of what you have to do in some fights. Like, um, the elemental interactions are like there are people that I don't know if you've ever like looked online at people's builds. There's like they call them boxomancers in those games where like you just focus
Boxomancers.
yeah, you focus full telekinesis and you fill a box or a chest with the
Oh,
heaviest shit and then just crush people with it.
yeah. Yeah. I know. I do know what you're talking about.
Which is the sort of like weird fun D&D interaction that you want. Like cuz that's the thing you can do at a table. I mean not quite that thing, but like those are the things people talk about. They're like, "Oh, yeah, we had this campaign and we had a rogue that got a teleporting dagger, so he would like throw it up into the air and teleport people behind people for backstabs, or whatever weird shit." And that's what people like about D&D. So that
Yeah.
kind of stuff is fun, but also just the difficulty curve in video games, I think, doesn't specifically lend itself. And we ran into this problem in DDO when we tried to run the like elite dungeons and stuff like that. It's just like they're just brutal. Like the poison dungeon that we bring up a
Oh my
lot, where we're just like
gosh.
we're getting murdered by poison traps.
Dude, you couldn't go anywhere. It was awful. I was
Um,
being invisible and just dying of poison. It didn't matter.
and I was a detect trap rogue. Like that was my specialization, and we were still getting fucking murdered by this dungeon. Because
Yeah.
it's just like the way they make it harder is just make you fail checks more, which sucks.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of a problem with video games in general is like the difficulty though. Like it's a lot harder for games to balance like harder difficulties without just amping up things like health and attack and not doing anything super interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of like design bloat to have to redo something for a higher difficulty. And
Yeah.
not that it doesn't happen. Like for all the hate it gets within the series, Dark Souls 2 did this pretty well. When you went into a different new game, enemies' positions changed or it added new black phantoms to make things harder.
Hmm.
And it happened a little bit in previous games, but like Scholar of the First Sin, I think more notoriously did it. Um, and like that's an instance of good change in a higher difficulty, but like yeah, most of the time it's just like this boy beefier and he hit harder.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some games that I can't think of them off the top of my head, but like they would change like the attack patterns or like add another attack, and I think that's a pretty interesting thing to do as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did. I just played Rogue Legacy, which has remix bosses, which are the four core bosses of the game, or the five core bosses of the
Oh,
game,
yeah, yeah.
but they are harder variants. So they have different moves, and you don't go in as the character you've been building. You go in as a set character, so you have to like use what you are given and get good with it, which is really interesting. And they were fucking brutal. Um, but yeah, like something like that's good. But yeah, I wish, in particular, with the D&D type games, it was like a variant of the module. Like instead of goblins, it became kobolds or whatever. I don't know what the CR on those. They might be the same.
They're about the same, yeah.
Instead of goblins, it's bugbears or
Yeah,
whatever.
there you go.
But yeah, it's just not really a thing that happens.
No, it's not, and it's kind of hard, I guess, to I don't know, maybe they don't have enough budget to just like put all those assets in or enough time, which is fair, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hope is that the assets already exist in another dungeon. You just sort of slide them down,
True, true.
and
But
then you just have a list that like extends past the list of dungeons. That is like, if you are playing on the curve, you never see these.
yeah, I feel like there are probably some games that do that, but then there are the others that take that a little like less to changing out the monster entirely and just like, oh, this is a variant of that monster. This one is like,
Yeah,
a different color and it's just
right.
slightly
And like
stronger.
that's like roguelikes do it a lot. Like you champion type enemies
Yeah.
are very prolific in those games.
Yeah.
Um, which we play a lot of, so we are very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the D&D style video games. I wish there was. I wish they were better. I guess like Divinity is a great game. It
Oh,
does
it's
not
so
lend
good.
itself to harder difficulty, though, and that is, I think, true of like quite a few of these games. And also, like some games, if they do curve the difficulty, they curve them a little too brutally. Did we play Neverwinter together? I think we did.
I don't remember. I remember I was downloading it, but I don't know if I ever actually went and played it.
Maybe we didn't. There are some times in Neverwinter where it like
Hmm.
curves quickly, and it's just like I am tickling this guy, and I just have to dodge and continue tickling him, or go fuck off and do something else.
Yeah.
Um, which is not a good feeling either. And it's a hard thing to balance, but like RPG games in particular get it wrong so often. I think
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think even like Skyrim has some issues trying to
got a
up
lot of issues with
difficulty.
Skyrim.
Yeah, yeah, you're an Oblivion guy, I know. But yeah, I still think that at the end of the day, I do prefer like those turn-based style games. Um, Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire. that one actually had an update, I believe it was, where they changed it so you could do like turn-based sort of like Divinity combat, and I thought that was like amazing. It was really cool. I need to get back to that at some point, but yeah, it's really well done.
I need to finish the first one so I can play that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with turn-based combat like that is it does lend itself to sort of cheese strats. You plan out your party to interact with each other to sort of end the combat in one turn as much as possible, which, like, I guess is valid, but it's also just kind of like, how do I mathematically steamroll this game?
Yeah, I definitely see that as an issue, but I think that if that's how you want to play, I mean, it's cool that you can do it, right? And then
Yeah,
you want to play with the more like role play elements like persuasion and whatnot. You can do that as well.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's why I play those games on their hardest difficulty because it's like if your game is going to lend itself to me pulling some bullshit, I also want if I fuck up you to just murder me. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fair.
um,
I I do think Baldur's Gate 3 is doing a pretty good job of like doing the like not necessarily the min max stuff because of all the cool like different scenarios you can get into where you can avoid combat through like specific checks. I there's like one thing in the very beginning where you are going to this person who's caged by these tieflings that are basically being protective of their people, and you go up and you can basically talk them down so they leave you alone and let you like save the person that's in the cage, or you could even screw up and just end up having to kill them.
yeah,
And yeah, that's something that I think the game does very well is just having different ways to approach scenarios where and I think Divinity kind of does that, but not nearly to the
yeah.
degree where you can circumvent challenges through certain ways, like certain decisions or skills that you might have. I think
Yeah,
that's
it's lesser so in Divinity. It's less about what you choose to do, and it's more like, did you do this thing beforehand? Like, did you complete this quest
yeah,
before?
yeah, and like having like I think they have like a persuasion skill or something in
Yeah, but it's not a dice roll in the game. The persuasion check in that game is weird.
in Divinity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know how it works to be honest.
So it's basically like whatever level you have. So if your persuasion level is 5, um,
Yeah.
everybody has a persuasion bar of 10. So if your persuasion is 5, it means you need to win the check twice. And the check is just you play rock, paper, scissors against them. Um,
Oh.
so
Okay.
if your charm is 5 and theirs is 3, they have to win 4 matches of rock, paper, scissors, and you have to win 2.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that's how they did it.
Yeah. And I don't know if they fudged the rock, paper, scissors odds if your persuasion is higher. Like it's not, one third, one third, one third. I don't know what happens behind the scenes, but yeah, it's weird. It's not a dice roll. It's very strange.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing is obviously you can't do completely random number generators for games like
Yeah.
that either.
Yeah. Computed RNG does not actually exist.
Yeah, so you do kind of run into that problem. It can get really close, but not quite.
Yeah. I mean, not that in a technical sense, physical RNG exists either. Like, if you had the perfect information, you could calculate what someone's going to roll.
I mean, I guess that's true. That could be said about like anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Um, yeah, that's why when people are like very, very specific about like, computed RNG doesn't work, it's like for our purposes, it does.
True. Yeah, it works for what we're trying to do, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. I'm out of questions now, unless you have anything else you want to dive into.
um, not like in particular. I will say that one of the things that I have been doing recently, that I think is also a really cool result of the whole, take it and make it your own kind of thing is I've actually made some subclasses myself and a full on like base class that I bounce stuff off with Jake for that we have made and it's in like testing phases and it's not like fully complete but it's cool because I'm actually able to like make full on mechanical things for players that have different preferences.
Yeah. Well, what is the base class?
So it's called a sojourner, and it comes from like shoot, I forget what the origin of the word is, but basically it's like a temporary like bond or contract.
Yeah.
And they basically it's this class that they don't have like innate like magical abilities, like they can't cast spells, they can't do stuff like that. But what they do is they can make sort of what we call like contracts with like magic spirits. They're basically just like physical manifestations of like magic that float around, and you make contracts with them, and they bind with you, and they give you like magical abilities like being able to jump further, move faster. Um, there's one of the subclasses where you can imbue your weapons with like elemental effects, like energies and stuff. And it's like D&D has class like some classes where you can kind of spec into being what they call a uh, shoot a gif. Trying to remember what it's called, but basically, like the melee magic people, the people that can use both weapons
Battle
and
mages.
yeah, yeah, essentially. And it's supposed to be kind of like in that vein, but without actually casting spells. So it's just you have these magical effects and abilities, but you're not a spellcaster. So it's more for the people that are looking for that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I like the sort of weird alt classes. Like I think I talked to you about this when my fiance was thinking about running Warhammer 40K. The class I
Mm.
was gonna play was shit, I don't remember what the name of the class is anymore. But
She's kind of like a paladin, right? Like almost.
oh, so that was the one I eventually ended up with. The original I was thinking about
Okay.
playing was D&D has like the deck of many things, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so it was like that. It's like a tarot deck essentially, and you draw a card and do things based on that. And that was like what the class was based around. So like
That sounds fun.
in combat, that's all you did is like you drew cards and just dealt with that shit. And I was like, hell yes, that sounds fun as fuck. But there's not an official deck apparently. Um, so you would have to like
What did you
homebrew a deck.
use?
Well, we
Oh,
never played it, but like she would have like had to homebrew a deck for the campaign.
with all the like mechanics in every
Yeah,
card. Oof.
like there's some known cards, but there's not an official. I forget what the deck is called in Warhammer. But as far as I saw online, there's not an official version of it.
Yeah, I guess the nice thing about that though is there's a lot of online resources you could probably just grab some
Yeah,
cards or decks that people have already made.
but yeah, that the idea of that I think is what influenced when I was trying to come up with my homebrew campaign because I wanted people's class to feel like an individual identity. Like I wanted it to tailor it to what they were doing and change it for them and make it feel more like unique to their character.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That way, it's more like their individual play style and how their like characters are, as opposed to just how the game has it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I think that would, if you ever got around to finishing that, I think that'd be a pretty decent.
yeah. Hopefully someday.
Yeah, like I said, I would definitely be cool with trying that out sometime.
Yeah,
I
it's
know
just a
Pathfinder kind
big
of
old
does
commitment.
that. What's that?
So it's just a big old commitment.
Yeah, trust me, I understand.
You said
uh,
Pathfinder kind of does. I guess that makes sense given the name.
yeah, it's so original Pathfinder. You have like your base class and features, but the thing that they did differently was they had like a bajillion feats, right?
Hmm.
And feat trees as well, like prereq feats where you need to take one feat before you can take the next and stuff like that. And you got a feat like every 2 levels basically. So like your half of your identity comes from just building around whatever feats you did. And that was honestly the coolest part about Pathfinder. I mean, there's a fuck ton of math in Pathfinder, like different modifiers affect everything. Like D&D 5e, your average like initiative modifier, like, it's usually only dexterity based, right? So it's going to be anywhere between like 0 to 5. when we played, I had a plus 21. like like you can do some crazy stuff and change it and everything.
Yeah.
In Pathfinder 2.0, we've not played that one, but I've looked into it because I was interested, and they actually changed it so that you're kind of like how you're doing, but less specific. I think maybe I'm not sure, but basically, like let's say you pick Ranger, you can pick a one of three like starting abilities. So
Mhm.
you don't just pick one. And instead of subclasses, like every time you get levels, you pick a feat, and then you could also pick like your class feature as well. So you kind of build your entire class, and there's no subclass. You just kind of make up your own as you're going along.
Yeah, so that's kind of the idea I had, was like everyone would start out as a basic thing. Like my idea was, if I ever got it off the ground, is that I would individually do a sort of session zero with everyone to sort of figure out what their character is. So they would start as, like, if someone's like, I want to play a mage, they would start as a mage or they start as a ranger, and then we would figure out from there how they specialized, um, and how that changed things. So it's like it could be like um, a druid, right? They start as a druid, but sometime during their session zero, as part of their lore, like they're communing with spirits and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, do you want to like wrap this into your class? And so instead of being like a druid that transforms, they commune with spirits and they're like now a summoning class,
Oh yeah, yeah,
summoning
that'd be
nature
cool.
spirits. Like that was the whole idea. Is I wanted to have a very on the fly customization. It's like, okay, you started as a ranger. Tell me about where your character started, and we do a session zero that's just like a lore thing of like, okay, we're starting in your hometown. We're talking about how you got to the point where everyone's meeting, and like I would just
Mhm.
add stuff and knock stuff off their character based on what happens, and like make a specialization for that character, and then they can specialize again later during the campaign as things happen. But I wanted each class to not just be like, I am a level one ranger. I have place trap, poison arrow, and hunter's mark. I wanted them to start feeling unique rather than building a unique character later, and then diving into that uniqueness and making like weird characters that they will never play again. Um, like two people could play the same class and even make sort of similar choices and not end up with the same character in the system, which I thought would be fun.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. It definitely, if you did it, you would just sort of, like you said, be making up like mechanics and stuff on the fly. Like just that would be a huge commitment because you'd have to sit down and think about it and discuss it with your players.
Yeah, so that's why I had, like, I mean, when we talked about this, I have an Excel sheet where I was just like ramming ideas in. And obviously, some people would still be able to just blindside me and I have to do stuff on the fly. But I wanted to have a catalog of information, and 90% of it would never get used in a campaign, obviously, because people just wouldn't make those choices. But I wanted to have it ready so I wasn't doing so much on the fly, and having ideas for stuff to do. Um, And yeah, when I was building out the world, like I had the idea of like the villains you're facing are also these unique specialization characters, so they have spec
Oh
in a
no!
different way. So they are unique builds in weird ways too.
Yeah, and you have to make them like strong enough to stand up to
Yeah.
like an entire group of people. So you'd have to make some really like a lot of different customization.
Well, yeah. So essentially, the idea was like I would test these characters. Um, I was bouncing back and forth on whether because I said I was going to test this homebrew system with people that weren't in the campaign. I was bouncing back and forth on whether to have the characters that they built be named villains that show up later so that they were like realized characters. Ultimately, I decided against that, and I would just have them tested against those characters at a low level so that I'm basically like role playing a villain against them at the same time and building my character.
Yeah.
And they're building a hero in lore. Um,
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you said that your idea was that you wanted it to be that we're not actually the heroes, we're the fuck ups that
yes,
have to like.
yeah. So
So
the
is that kind of what you were thinking with that?
the idea was there was like a prophecy in the world of a party of heroes that would um, save the world. But as a result of, I actually planned out a few things of why it happened. Ultimately, like a chain reaction started that one person in the party broke the prophecy through something they did, and now every hero in that party became fair game to die. They were no longer prophetically protected, so they all died off. And the party was going to be a gathered approximation of those people. So like,
Yeah.
so you would all have one of the heroes you looked up to, or that you specialize similarly to. You wouldn't have to specifically tie themselves to your lore, but in some cases you would be tied to them in lore. So like, say there was a paladin in the party, and they were like, they were a paladin that throughout the, whoever I got to play tested, they built out their paladin, and it was a paladin that was all about AoE fire effects or something. Like, one of you guys would be a paladin of a similar note, but your own specialization, and someone has gathered you because you are close approximations, and they're just hoping that people of similar note will be able to complete the, the the prophecy. Yeah, I think when I pitched it to you, I was like, there's a party of heroes that are, prophesized to save the world. You are not them. They're all dead. You're the next best thing. Good luck.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty much exactly what you said.
Yeah.
I do think that sounds like pretty fun and interesting. You should definitely get around to finishing that out if you can.
Yeah,
I
it's
would
just it's
focus.
just so much work.
Oh, yeah, I know. I like basically if I had to recommend anything, I would say just focus on detailing out the world, and then like since you're kind of just making up mechanics on the fly, anyways. Um, you're never going to be prepped for everything, but
Yeah.
prep
Well,
what you can.
another frustrating thing that I wanted to build it so it was flexible, because obviously people's schedules are gonna be a problem. And I also wanted there to be downtime. So I think I talked to you about this too. I wanted it to be when you go to a town, instead of it just being like a quick 15-minute thing, everybody goes and does their buying bullshit, and then we get back to the quest. I wanted when you go back to the town, the next session was like an individual uh, thing, like session zero was, where you get the chance to flesh out your character away from the party and do things that you want to do. So, uh,
Ah, yeah.
so say your character is like, I don't know, you're a mage and you really want to learn a high tier spell, or you're searching for a magic tome, or looking for who killed your dad, or whatever your bullshit is. When you go to a town, uh, the session would, every couple sessions, a session would end at a town, and then the next weekend or whenever it is, I would do individual calls with people again and be like, okay, what do you want to do in this town? Do you want to track down leads for your personal quest or what you're trying to do? Do you want to just try to make some money? Do you want to go solo explore something? And like, give people a chance to again flesh out their characters on their own. And that would give me a chance to do more of the character specialization in a one-on-one setting, rather than like derailing the whole party to be like, do you want to change your character and like modify the spell in this way, and be able to keep it
Yeah.
being adapting. But as a result, I would basically be sacrificing a day to do individual calls with everyone in the party, uh, or like over the course of the week doing it, trying to spec their characters again. um
I mean, if you only have like three people doing it, it's not going to
yeah.
be too bad. But
But yeah, I felt that was like an important thing of the system, because I didn't want people's party, like I didn't want the party alignment to stop individual growth, um, both in class and in personal quests. Like I wanted people to feel realized in that way. And it could just be as simple as like I message you on Discord and be like, we just do it over text. Like it doesn't have to be like a, we hop on a call sort of thing. But like I wanted to have
yeah,
personal time for people's characters, um, where they could, search out their personal quests. And then if it is a thing of like, yeah, this thing is in a dungeon, you can bring it up to the party and be like, hey, next session can we go to this dungeon together? Um, Solo exploring a dungeon is probably not a good idea.
usually not. Yeah,
But yeah, I
uh,
wanted room to explore stuff like that, which also just
yeah.
adds more work.
True. Yeah, I've had moments where I've had to do sessions outside of the normal session, or like messaging people about what they want to do. There is like the very first homebrew campaign. I had two people fall into a bottomless pit. Um, but like at the bottom of the pit, the reason like it was bottomless, like no one went down there, kind of thing, was because there was this magic, like basically super powered weapon that was so like strong, and that it basically cracked a hole into another like plane of existence, and so they fell down for like the longest time until they ended up in another dimension, and I had to run a session. I think almost a full like 4 6 hours just for those two people, so they could like explore and get out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's we've definitely been there having to do that kind of thing, and it is a lot to do when you're already doing 6 hour sessions during
Yeah.
the week.
And it would also be okay for the person to just be like, yeah, I don't really have anything I want to do this week. Or if they're busy, like it also gives people an opportunity to be like, I need to miss the next session. It's like, cool, let's go to a town. Everyone else can fuck off and do a thing, and you can just not be there, and you don't miss any core stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I think that that would be interesting to do. Just give people a chance to have that one on one.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe someday, but probably not,
You know, say
realistically.
you've been saying maybe someday for like how many years now? Like 4.
No, it hasn't been 4.
It's been a while.
I feel like it's been like 2 years.
I mean, you can look at the sheet that you made and
True,
see
I
how
can
old
look at
that
the
is.
sheet. Yeah, sure. Here, let's find out. Find out how old that sheet is if I can even find it.
Like it's been a while from what I remember.
Yeah, the problem is I'm really bad at labeling sheets a lot of the time too. So it's a crapshoot whether it'll be labeled in my Google Drive or anything like that.
What would you have like labeled it that you wouldn't be able to find
Well,
it
no, I
though?
just leave a lot of my stuff as like untitled spreadsheet.
Oh my gosh.
I have so
It's
many untitled spreadsheets in my Google Drive.
it's so easy to just type a name in.
Yeah, but then you have to do it.
I mean, yeah.
Don't do
Yeah, you do.
that. Oh, is this it? Oh, I think this is it. Okay, I think I found it.
Okay,
I found one
so
of them anyway. Um, Created July 15th, 2019. It's been 3 years.
3 years. Okay. I mean, I wasn't too far off from 4,
I
yeah.
mean, neither was I. I said 2. We were the same distance apart.
Yeah. All right, fair. You also said July, so it's like right in the
Yeah,
middle.
it's like almost exactly 3 years. Um, yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, to be fair, you say I said someday. I have always said, but probably not.
True. You have
I've
always said
never had
probably.
the idea that I will definitely finish this thing.
I'm surprised like the you haven't had someone try to run a session for you or like a module or something already.
I mean, it's come up a couple times. My fiance's talked about doing it. My cousin, Jonathan, which you maybe have Astro City. We played something with him before.
Oh,
Maybe we maybe played
yeah.
Among Us with him one time.
I think it was Among Us.
Yeah, he's talked about it. I've had friends talk about it. It's just like every time it comes up, the campaign just never comes to fruition.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is like you have like you you a lot of times if you really want to play, you have to be that guy that like nobody wants to organize it, right? Like nobody wants to be that guy to like like organize the entire group and get that first session going and whatnot. And yeah, that basically you just have to be that guy.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be that guy until I've finished my system. So never. So
I mean, you could just try it out like a module or something,
yeah,
you
I
know,
probably
like
won't. But
it feels. Yeah, okay.
the
Fair enough.
most realistic chance of me trying out is if one of those campaigns finally come to fruition, or I crash yours for a weekend or two.
True, but then you don't have the experience of being a DM. The experience.
Well, no, but I think it's more normal to be a player first before you're a DM.
Yeah, you'd think, huh?
I do think that, yeah.
Not me, dude.
Not you, but I said more normal. I didn't say everybody.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
um, yeah, I mean that's all I got.
Yeah, I don't think I really have anything else on my mind.
We did a cool hour and a half.
Definitely was longer than I expected. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean this is pretty par for the course, I think.
Yeah.
Um, My usual outro spiel. So this is yeah, this is set up in such a way that people can return if they want, not immediately, but further down the line. You know, because it doesn't have to be something you have like a lot of personal experience with. It can just be something you're interested in, or you know, I think people like if you watched a movie last night, you want to just rant about it. It can be whatever. Um, yeah, you can always come back and do another one on something else sometime.
Cool. Yeah, it was pretty fun actually. I if you need someone, I definitely will be there.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't repeated anyone yet, but I'm getting to the point that like, because this is episode 10, and I feel like after a couple months, I feel like it's not, it wouldn't be too weird to repeat people. So I might ask some of the earlier people again, like, hey, do you want to do this again? Do you have anything? And I'm also, constantly reaching out to people, trying to find more people to do it. And I need to extend my web more than I have done. But yeah,
Sure, you could do Taylor if you wanted to.
yeah,
I don't know what
she's
she'd talk
game.
about, but yeah.
She'd have to figure out what she wants to talk about, which is a problem for some people. It has definitely been a struggle with some people I've asked.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, you approached me and you're like, "Hey, so I'm doing this podcast and you like D&D, so maybe you want to do that." And I'm like, "Okay,
I
okay, yeah, that sounds good
Well,
to
I figured this
me."
was the most likely thing for you to pick anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's easy for me to talk about for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's it. So, to anybody here, thanks for watching or listening or both, whatever the case may be. And see you next time.
Yeah.